Hey there. So today we're going to take a look at our human population growth notes. So this is going to be packet page 156 from our handout. So let's go ahead and get started. And we're going to take a look at how human population can grow and shrink. So, do you think Earth will run out of room for humans? What are some things that you think might actually affect the size of Earth's human population? So there's a number of different factors that can influence population size. You have immigration and emigration. So let's take a look. So emigration is when you leave an area, either a country or a city, you move out. So emigration, you exit. Immigration is coming to a new place, either a country or a city. So think immigration in. So the sentence that we could write in our notes, right, it tells us to write a sentence. We could say the Pilgrims emigrated from England and immigrated to America. I could say personally that I emigrated from Tennessee and immigrated to North Carolina. So I left Tennessee and came to North Carolina. So emigration is when you are moving out of one population, and immigration, you're moving into another population. So we can determine if a population, either of humans or rabbits or beetles, is increasing or decreasing by looking at the change in population. This is calculated by the birth rate plus your immigration number. So basically how many babies are being born that year, plus how many people moved into that area that year, minus your death rate, so how many people died that year, minus emigration, how many people moved out. So how many were born, plus how many moved in, minus how many died, minus how many left. That gives us a change in our population number. So if this number is a positive number, if we have higher birth rates and higher immigration compared to death rate and emigration, then our population is growing. But our population is decreasing if we end up with a negative number, because that would mean our death rate and or our immigration is higher than the birth rate and immigration. So there are a couple things that have led to a decrease in our death rate, which of course would cause our population to increase. So better medicine. So we have a higher mortality rate, a lower mortality rate, meaning less babies are dying or less people are dying at a young age. So they're making it to adulthood where they could have their own children. Availability of vaccines. So fewer people are dying of treatable, preventable diseases like measles and mumps. And also an increase in food supply caused by technology, right? Better machines that are able to harvest or plant and harvest more space of food. So we can produce more food, which means we can feed more people. So we're able to keep those people alive. Things that have led to an increase in the birth rate. Well, if more people are surviving, that means there are more people each year that could have babies. So better medicine, better vaccines, more food, right? It means more people surviving to adulthood, and the more people there are, the more children they can have. So a lower death rate plus a higher birth rate, you're going to have a higher population growth. So when we're talking about human population, we use what are called age structure diagrams to illustrate whether a population is growing or shrinking. So we've got 3 different countries here, Afghanistan, the United States, and Italy. So let's take a look at Afghanistan. If we start down here at the bottom, we can see the percent of population. So here's the age structures. So 0 to 4. So infants to 4-year-old children. And then males are in orange and the females are over here in green. So it looks like the percent of the population that is age 0 to 4 is, let me see, there's 9% that are male and 9% that are female. So that would be about 18%. So 18% of the population is 0 to 4. If we go up to the top and we take a look at 70 to 74, oh my gosh, that's such a small thing. I would say maybe 2%, maybe 1% male, 1% female. So 2% of the Afghanistan population is aged 70 to 74. And then it doesn't look like there's anyone that's 85 plus right there. So for Afghanistan, a majority of their population is very young. So then we've got the United States. Again, looking at the 0 to 4 age range, males, a little bit more than 3, but not quite 4%. And then, so let's just call it 3%. So 3% males, 3% females, so that's 6%. 6% of our population is age 0 to 4. But it looks like most of our individuals are around the 40 to 44 age range. So about 4% male, 4% female. So 8% of the population is 40 to 44. But we do still have quite a few people that are alive, 85 and plus. Definitely more females than males. And then finally, Italy, 2, maybe 4. So about 4% plus of their population is age 0 to 4. And again, most of their population is in the 30 to 45 age range. So these age structure diagrams can help us see if a country, in this case, is experiencing positive or negative growth. So Afghanistan is experiencing rapid growth. They have the largest percent of their population is very young, which means as these individuals get older and have their own children, there will be more people added to the population. The United States is growing, but it's slower growth. Our structure looks more like a column versus Afghanistan, which really kind of looks like a pyramid. Most of our individuals are already middle-aged, so they've already had their children, but they just had fewer children. And then Italy is not really showing any growth at all. We've got very few children that are being born to the highest population age range. So if we were to take a look at an age structure diagram of a population that is decreasing, which one would it look like? Afghanistan, United States, or Italy? It would be Italy. Italy has a decreasing or no growth population. So out of these 2 age structure diagrams, which population do you think is growing the fastest? Number 1 over here on the left, or number 2 over here on the right? Well, the population that's growing the fastest is going to be number 1 over here on the left. Because again, there are way more individuals down here, 0 to 4, 1 to 5. So in 20 years, when these young children are in the middle and ready to have their own children, there will be more of them. More people means more offspring. So this population over here, it is growing, but it's just not growing as fast as the one on the left. So population density, again, when we're talking about population growth, so density, basically how crowded a space is. And we can drop this definition just below our pyramids of Afghanistan and the United States. So population density, basically how many people are there within a certain space? How crowded is it? The change or destruction of an ecosystem to the point that the species that once lived there can no longer survive is known as habitat destruction. Humans do a pretty good job of destroying habitats, either through pollution, deforestation, overgrazing, desertification. A lot of habitats can be destroyed through urban sprawl, where we are building more houses, or we're turning forests into farmland. So the human impact on Earth, there are quite a few impacts that we have on the air, the land, and the water. So acid rain is one type of human impact. Acid rain is caused by sulfites and nitrates that are released into the atmosphere through the burning of fossil fuels. So these gases essentially mix with the water vapor that's up in the clouds, and then they combine. And when the rain falls back to Earth, it is more acidic than normal. It's supposed to be neutral. Water is neutral, pH of 7. But acid rain, like it says, it's more acidic. And this can destroy forests. It can kill seeds of plants that are, laying on the forest floor. And it can also destroy buildings and statues. It can eat away at concrete and granite and other human-made structures. Algal blooms. Remember, we just talked about this in our last video. Algal blooms are caused when fertilizers or animal waste, right, farm waste that contains nitrogen and phosphorus, they run off into lakes or rivers, and then the algae just takes over. So the algae are eaten up by bacteria, which use up all of the oxygen that's in the water, all of the dissolved oxygen that's in the lake. And because there's no oxygen left, the fish, the crustaceans, they essentially suffocate to death. There's not enough oxygen for them. Chlorofluorocarbons, more commonly known as CFCs. These are from aerosol spray cans and refrigerant coolants. They are banned. They have not been used in a number of years. We found that chlorofluorocarbons, or CFCs, the aerosols made holes in our ozone layer. And if you are not familiar with the ozone, it is very important. The ozone protects us from the harmful UV radiation from the sun. So without the ozone, we would be continuously exposed to very high doses of harmful UV radiation. So back in the early 1990s, late 1980s, like 128 countries got together, and we banned the use of CFCs in spray cans and refrigerant coolants because it was so damaging to the environment. So you will not find CFCs in any products anymore. Greenhouse gases. We mentioned one greenhouse gas earlier, carbon dioxide, but these are gases that are released into the atmosphere from the burning of fossil fuels. And they can increase the greenhouse effect by trapping in extra heat, which can cause the climate to change or shift. Now, carbon dioxide is not the only greenhouse gas, but it is the greenhouse gas that has been linked directly to human influence through the burning of fossil fuels, cars, factories. We are putting more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, which is trapping more heat in the atmosphere, which is causing the planet to become warmer in certain areas and causing the climate to change. Pesticides, this one's on your notes, but a pesticide is any type of chemical that can kill pests. Pesticides are bad for the environment because, again, they can cause algae blooms, but they can also move up the food chain and cause damage to secondary and tertiary consumers. They're chemicals. Pesticides or even insecticides, they're chemicals that we are now spraying into the environment where they're not supposed to be. So a good natural alternative would be to use a natural predator of the pest, so toss a rabbit out there, or use a goat to go and kind of weed your lawn instead of spraying a weed killer. Biomagnification, we briefly mentioned this when we were taking a look at our energy pyramid foldable, but biomagnification is when poisons build up in a food web and the top of the trophic pyramid always has the most poison. We mentioned the poison DDT, which was being sprayed as an insecticide in the 1970s. It is absolutely banned now. But poisons, when they get sprayed, down at the bottom of the food chain, there's really not a lot, 2 parts per billion. But then as we move up the food chain, the amount of that poison is magnified, because the zooplankton will eat a couple thousand phytoplankton, and then the herring will eat a couple hundred zooplankton. And then the porpoise will eat a couple dozen herring. So even though the herring only had, 6 parts per billion, meaning out of a billion molecules, 6 of them contain the poison, right? That doesn't seem like a lot. But again, the porpoise is eating dozens of herring every day. And so the porpoise ends up being poisoned by its own food because the herring had the toxin already inside its cells, in its fat and in its tissues. So biomagnification is one of the few examples where as you move up the food chain, the amount actually increases. And then last but not least, we have non-native species, also called invasive species. These are species that do not originally come from a certain area. They are essentially brought to a new area, either accidentally or intentionally, maybe done by humans. The reason this is really bad for the environment is that invasive species do not have any natural predators in this new area. So the invasive species can kill off or outcompete native species. So the example we talked about in class was kudzu. Kudzu just takes over. It outcompetes, it overgrows all of the other plants. And then any animals or insects that get introduced into a new area, again, they just outcompete the native species for food. And so then the native species population starts to decline because they're still having to worry about predators, but the invasive species does not. So there we go. That's it for these notes on human population growth and a little bit on human impact. If you have any questions or concerns, just let me know. Thanks.